Today we're jumping into German horror with 1979's NOSFERATU the Vampire, directed by the masterful Werner Herzog, and it is starring Klaus Kinski as the titular vampire Count Dracula. Jonathan Harker is sent away to Count Dracula's castle where he is supposed to sell him a house in Werner. Inspired by a picture of Jonathan's wife Lucy, Count Dracula then moves to Werner, where he brings death and plague along with him. This is a very interesting case here because this manages to be a remake of the 1922 Murnau Nosferatu, but it also manages to be a retelling of Bram Stoker's Dracula novel. So in the original 1922 Nosferatu, the characters, they didn't have the rights to, so what they did is they made up their own characters but basically ripped off the story of Dracula. Whereas this one, you could tell they got the rights to all the characters. For example, like in the original, he's called Count Orlok instead of Count Dracula. I wanted to talk about this movie because Robert Eggers has his Nosferatu movie coming out in a couple months. Also, I want to talk about it because I want to keep going on with our vampire theme. Werner Herzog is truly one of the best independent filmmakers of all time, with such an illustrious career. This movie isn't even one of my favorites from his filmography, but it's up there for sure. He's known for having a very unconventional directing style, and I think you could kind of see that in this film. This movie begins with these shots of these small statues. They almost look like children. And then immediately you think to yourself, what the hell is this supposed to mean? When you rewatch it a few times, you realize that they're probably Dracula's victims? I don't know. Herzog makes these very artsy choices with his visuals, which might be a turnoff for some people because it could come across as very pretentious. But for me, I think his visuals are stunning in all of his movies, but it's certainly the case here. He has a lot of very wide, epic shots, and then you have also very close, intimate shots, especially of Klaus as the vampire. And some of the shots in this movie are actually ripped straight from the original 1922 Nosferatu, especially in that dinner scene particularly.
It's only for the best.
This film is a mix of Herzog's new original vision for the character, as well as 1922's F.W. Murnau's version put together. You could tell it's trying to be a tribute, but also trying to be its own thing at the same time. It's one of the best vampire movies ever made. It's certainly one of the best Dracula movies ever made, and it's not even really a Dracula movie. Klaus Kinski brings this different version to the character of Count Dracula that we hadn't seen before. I know I mentioned in the Horror of Dracula review that Christopher Lee plays him very animalistic, very evil. In this one, he is very soft-spoken, very gentle, and he is a seemingly tortured soul. He does not play the character like a monster at all, which is my only nitpick with him, because I believe the character of Dracula is at heart pure evil. For example, there's this great scene where Klaus Kinski gives this great monologue about time being an abyss and how there are worse things than death, like having to live for centuries and watch your loved ones die over and over again. Klaus Kinski plays the character like a tragic hero, almost. You know, he is this person that has to live for an eternity. He can't love. He just only knows loss. He also offers the creepiness that we know from the character. Even with his soft-spoken tone, you always feel unsettled by him, and obviously the makeup does that very well too, but the way he moves, the fingernails, the mannerisms are just very creepy. The score for this film manages to bring this uplifting, heroic sound to it, while also having this main theme being this bellowing chorus that is so haunting to listen to. The music just adds to the atmosphere that Herzog is building and only adds to performances in the movie as well. I'm scared I'm going to butcher this actress's name. I believe it's Isabelle Adjani, but she plays Lucy Harker, and the relationship with Lucy and Count Dracula is one of the most captivating things about this movie besides the visuals. She could communicate a lot with these very wide expressions and different facial expressions, and she gives a very physical performance, almost like how Klaus Kinski gives a very physical performance in this movie, but in a different way, you know? She's not wearing all this makeup that he has to wear. She equally has a lot to live up to, I feel like. But and then the guy that plays Jonathan Harker, slipping on his name, I believe it's Bruno something or other, but he does a great job as well. But I feel like the standouts in this movie, Klaus Kinski and then Isabelle Adjani. Watching this movie, it's like watching this moving painting. I think that's like the best way to describe it, because you have these very epic landscape shots and very deep shadows that are just so beautiful to look at. It just goes to show that Herzog, I think, was just built different. He was just cut from a different fabric at that time. The different filmmakers were just not on the same par as him. Like, the lengths that he would go to make these movies, he would pour his heart and soul into them. I will say this movie can come off as pretentious to some people. I know that's been like a main criticism of it, but I love everything about this movie. I think the only thing that I would have to nitpick is the fact that Count Dracula isn't really a monster in this movie. It's just a tragic hero, or a tragic love story, as they always like to make him. The visuals alone, the music, the performances just make this movie top tier for me. I'm going to give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I will say this movie is not for everyone. If you're just an average moviegoer that likes to go see blockbusters, this is probably not for you. It's more of something to be studied, rather than something that you could just turn on and just casually watch. Thank you guys again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next episode of 31 Days of Horror.